It's PresleyofActOutGames.com here, and today we are going to be doing another conversation about the sexual assault thing. Yeah.
Yes, it's sort of about the sexual assault thing. Like, hopefully,
not really anymore. But
yeah, hopefully this won't be like every Saturday we talk about the sexual assault thing. But I mean, it's still just a growing story.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I like that you do your little salute now. That's a cute little addition to the thing. And I think yesterday at the dentist too, you people were sort of flabbergasted when you curtsy. Because the dentist was like, okay, thanks, Presley, it was nice to meet you. And you're like, you did your little curtsy. He's like, well, okay then.
That's just how, I don't know where I learned.
No, I love it. I love it. I think you should do it for the rest of your life because I think it's awesome.
And yes, I do the lesbian salute at the beginning of every video.
Oh, is it a lesbian salute?
Yeah.
I had no idea. All right.
It is.
I didn't know that. Yeah, it was a...
pioneered by Kate McKinnon herself.
It's super, super cute. Anyway, yeah, so hopefully this is not like the constant thing. And this is a little bit more about our homeschooling philosophy and
aliens,
and learning and aliens apparently. And like there's a lot that wraps into this one. But the sexual assault thing is what made me think about having this conversation, right?
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to other people mostly, and we're talking about homeschooling and what's important about learning and stuff like that, what's one of the things that I always say is the most important thing for you to learn?
Yes. So you always say that it's important because like now in 2017, you can get any information you want. So like knowing stuff isn't really necessary. I mean, like I like to know stuff, but it's not necessary because you can just look it up.
Right.
And the important thing is knowing how to discern false information from good actual
trusted sources and stuff like that. Yeah. So like when I was a kid, it was important for me to learn how to research, like how to go to the library and find the things that you wanted and look stuff up and learn about it. And usually you could only find like one or two things, and they were relatively authoritative. You know, like an encyclopedia or somebody that would have wrote a book about something. Like there was a vetting process for information, so that the information that I found you could by and large trust. Right now you've sort of got the opposite, where there is no skill required to go do research to learn about a topic. You do a Google search, but there's also now no real vetting process for what goes on the internet. So anyone can put anything on the internet. I mean, the case in point, we're here giving our opinion about this stuff. So you have to learn. I get 10,000 search results for this thing that I search, and maybe I look at the top 5 articles on something, and they disagree. And they talk in different ways. Like, how do I decide what to trust and what not to trust?
Yeah.
And so in these cases, especially with the sexual assault things, it's a perfect example because, like, other than a few rare and bizarre-ish examples, most of these people aren't doing this stuff on camera or in public and in ways that there's an obvious piece of evidence that you can say, yeah, I can see this happening, right? Most of the time, obviously, it's done like in somebody's hotel room or in somebody's office, and it's just the two people in the room. And so you have an accusation that comes out, and it's a very he said, she said. In this case, literally he said, she said. But in general, it's just two people, one person's word against another person's word about what happened. And so the implications of what are going on are serious, right? Yeah. Because number one, it's a serious crime that's taking place. Someone's potentially exhibiting this horrible behavior and doing these horrible things. On the other hand, someone's career and particularly their life could be ruined by the accusations that are coming out against them, right? If it's true, or even if people believe that it's true and it's not true, then they can suffer these horrible consequences for something that didn't happen. So the stakes are very high in a case like this. And so I'm just curious, from your mindset, when you see these kinds of things happening, and I know you haven't followed the details of all the cases and all the things that are happening, but just in general, when something like this comes out in the news, what do you take into account to decide whether you trust the accuser or not in the sexual harassment case, or like if it's a he said, she said situation in general,
right? To
decide who you trust.
Right. Well, like first of all, I have like people that I trust, like actors. Like I trust Chris Pratt. I would trust Chris Pratt with my life for some reason. I just really like Chris Pratt. And like I tend to have people that I have seen that like I follow through social media, and I'm like, okay, this person seems cool, and if they're accusing someone, I feel like I would go with them more.
What about the other way? What if a woman came forward and said that Chris Pratt sexually assaulted her on the set of a movie that they shot 5 years ago?
Right.
And he denies it.
And he did what?
He denies it.
Yeah.
He says, no, that didn't happen. Would
Right.
you still believe Chris Pratt over her automatically?
No, maybe not automatically. I feel like I would have to research whoever this person is.
But like your default position would be to
Yeah, because like I
believe
don't.
Chris Pratt. Right. No, that's
We're
fine.
just talking about Chris.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
He's
Yeah,
trustworthy.
a person that you trust.
Yes, because like there's a lot of stuff, like especially now, which is super duper gross. Now, since a lot of people are being called out, I feel like some people are going to take advantage of that to tear down people they just don't like for some reason.
I mean, excellent point, right? That's an excellent point, right? I think that there's a lot of potential for misinformation. So I think there's the potential for, like you said, someone who doesn't like someone to do something.
Right.
And would falsely accuse them, and because everybody is sort of swept up into this thing, for there to be some danger there.
Right.
I think there's also the potential for, like, and this is just deviousness, I think, right? But if you think about like Judge Moore, I know you're probably not following a ton of his stuff, and we won't go deeply into his stuff, right? But there are accusers coming out accusing him of doing things a long time ago, like a really long time ago, and so he's a like staunch Republican conservative kind of guy, and so there's this extra like hypocrisy element of someone who is significantly on the moral right getting busted potentially doing something bad, right? And so people are sort of taking glee in some of that, and there's I was thinking about, you get multiple accusers coming out against one person, and so it starts building up kind of a tide of, oh, okay, well, good grief, now it's like 7 people that are saying this, right?
Yeah.
That Judge Moore and his people, or just people who support him, could come out and have one person come out and falsely accuse him and join the group of people that are accusing him of doing something, and then that person gets busted as being a false accuser, and then that discredits the people who are maybe legitimate accusers.
Oh,
right?
That's...
I know.
Whoa.
I'm planting ideas in Judge Moore's head here, right? But you can do like counterintelligence. You have this opportunity. Oh, there are 5 women that are claiming that he did something. Hey, let's have like a 6th woman come out that he went to high school with that really supports him, come out and accuse him of doing something, and then later, like in some like really falsifiable way, and then we'll prove that she's lying, and then we can imply that everyone's lying because this one person is lying, right? So there's all of these kinds of things that you can do to make things risky, right? And so I think that, yeah, like to me, it's a really interesting thing to do, and it's an analysis that you have to make all of the time. And so, luckily, or not luckily, but I would say on the receiving end of the sexual assault allegations, there are kind of 3 different responses that I've seen. And in one of them, you get like the Louis C.K. response, which was, yeah, that happened. Like that's all true, and I feel horrible about it, and I was a terrible human being, and I did bad things, right? So not a lot of discernment required in the Louis C.K. case, right? It is, yeah, I did it, right? And then you get like Judge Moore against some of his accusers, and Kevin Spacey, and a few other people said, like, I don't remember doing that, but if I did it, it was a terrible thing, and maybe I was drunk, and I think Kevin Spacey said he was drunk. Judge Moore said, yeah, I don't really remember doing that, but it's possible that happened.
How do you not remember that, my dude?
And so I think in those cases, I generally just automatically believe the woman.
Right.
So
like
if you're going to say, yeah, maybe.
Right, because like if you don't remember it, that could mean that is a thing that happens so often you cannot discern it.
Excellent point, because I fall kind of along the same lines. Yeah, you know, maybe I sexually assaulted that woman, but I don't really remember that. Like that's not something that registers in my head as something that I would
do.
I would recollect. If you can't remember whether you sexually assaulted somebody or not, you may have done it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like Judge Moore against one of his accusers, and Donald Trump, and like several people who are just flat out.
Yeah, but like I don't trust Donald Trump.
No, it didn't happen. Right, and so this goes the opposite. Like Donald Trump is your anti-Chris Pratt.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't trust him in any situation ever.
Right, you probably assume he's not telling the truth because of what you know about him. But like I will say, as a counter argument, you know, I really liked Kevin Spacey. I really liked Harvey Weinstein. Like a lot of these people who have come out, like Louis C.K., like are people. Like I don't know that I would necessarily say that I trusted them, but they seemed like good people who did good things and certainly made good art. It goes back to our conversation last week about like liking their art.
Yeah.
So people who produced stuff that I liked and seemed to be people I would get along with and agree with and understand those things.
Right.
So I think you have to be a little careful about, oh, like I trust this person. So I think, yeah, you've got those sort of three models, like people who just flat out admit it, people who claim to not remember doing it, which I think is worse, and then people that deny it.
Right.
And so it's really the people that deny it that you have to make a decision about.
Right.
So the first two are pretty easy. The second one, if somebody's just flat out denying that it happened and it's just purely one person's word against another, what are the things that you should probably take into account in those situations?
Right. I feel like you've got to take into account the amount of allegations against them.
Excellent. Number of people that have come forward? Yes.
How similar... Okay, never mind. This is kind of about aliens because that's what I
That's
know
fine.
about.
Yeah, apparently BuzzFeed Unsolved had a conversation similar to this
They did
about aliens.
Roswell yesterday.
Okay.
And so, well, maybe not yesterday for you. Yesterday for me.
Yeah.
And so like if there are like 6 people, or if there are in the aliens case 600 people that describe, just because aliens are easier to talk about than sexual assault.
Yeah. No, like I said, this applies in all of these cases.
Anything.
Yeah.
So if that describe this thing as happening very similarly, then that can be given a little bit more credit than before.
Yeah.
But like, if there is no other
right. So here's the thing too. Like so that's two things I think. One of them is like the number of people.
And how credible.
And the number two is how common, how similar the descriptions are, right?
But the problem with how similar descriptions is that they could be copying someone else.
Exactly. You're really good at this, Presley. So yes, that's exactly right. So unless they didn't know about each other.
Yeah.
And didn't know the other people's descriptions.
And we would have solid evidence that, okay, this is about Roswell again, because we would have like a solid piece of evidence that there might have been aliens might have crashed in Roswell if everyone was like, okay, if everyone that claimed to have seen the crash went in separately and gave their description of the crash without seeing anyone else.
Yeah.
And not hearing their testimonies?
Yeah.
I guess. And not hearing those. Then we would, and if they were all similar, then we would have a little bit more of concrete evidence. And that's true of anything.
Of course.
And the problem is now it's super duper easy to copy someone else.
Yeah, I mean, especially like in taking it back to like the sexual assault allegations, like those are all over the news. And so everybody knows what this person is claiming, and so if someone else read that, then they could come out and make a similar claim, right?
Yeah.
That would not be a difficult thing to do. But that is totally a factor, right? I think that similar to what you're saying, the similarities between the accounts that people are giving would be the level of detail in the accounts. Like if you're talking to somebody and seeing somebody and you're listening to it, then there's like a level of detail that comes out. That you can feel like someone is recounting a real event,
right?
And that is like a parabola, right? So like some of the things, I don't know that you and I have ever really had this conversation, but a lot of things, like if you start with there's no detail, then there's little believability, and then as you get a little bit more detail, then the believability goes up. And then suddenly, as you start getting a little bit too much detail, the believability starts going down. Yeah. Because you're really, like, if you're talking about something that happened like 40 years ago, but you're like really descriptive of like every tiny little detail of the thing, then it starts feeling a little made up and like prepared, and you're thinking about too much detail, right? So you've got this like parabola of belief. So a level of detail increases, belief goes up for a little while, and then it starts coming back down. Right. And so like that's a discernment thing of listening to somebody. And I think a lot of it comes back to like a gut feel. It's kind of unfortunate, but a lot of it is, and I think this is part of why it's important to see these people, for these allegations specifically, to see these people like on TV or in the media talking about what happened to them, because it allows you to watch that person and listen to what they have to say and make some kind of a personal judgment about whether you believe them or not. Yeah. Because fundamentally that's all you've got. Because like I said, these things happened in private between two people. And now, or the allegations are, like nobody witnessed it. So you have to watch one person say what happened and another person deny it. And then you have to watch them both and you have to make this personal decision about whether you believe them or not. And in almost all of the cases of the sexual harassment that are happening right now that people have come out, I believe the accusers, personally. right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a ton of different factors that have gone into that. It's just a matter of who do I believe versus who do I not believe, right? And then if you come to the point where you believe that it's your personal opinion and discernment about who you believe and who you don't believe, then you have to start thinking about how much tolerance do I have for someone who personally views it on the other side. Someone who watches the same testimony and they decide, yeah, I don't believe that, right? Or like, I think that probably happened, but I'm not sure enough that we should ruin this person's career over it, right? Like, it's a fine line of, like, you're not convicting somebody in a court of law, right? Like, if the thing was to send this person to jail, there would be a huge bar of proof that you had to prove that it happened beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And like all these things. But to influence someone's career or have them lose their job or have them lose their public credibility or something like that, the bar is a lot lower, as it should be. But you still kind of have to say, like, what's the level of proof that I need for me to believe that it happened? And then is there a higher bar that I need for a person to face consequences because I believe something bad happened? And then is there a higher bar for, like, is the level of belief have to be commensurate in some way with the evidence or the punishment that the person's going to face?
Right.
What do you think?
That's like a good thing. Like, I don't think about people getting arrested enough in this situation.
Yeah, so I mean, don't think about arrested. Think about, like, just, job punishment.
Right. Because the thing, like, I can relate this to only a couple things that have happened to me because, like, I don't really know who any of these people that are getting accused of. I do know who I guess not John Tron because he was, but I know who Tobuscus is. Yeah. I think that's the only example I can think of that is similar to these.
That's a good one. I think that's a good one.
Because, like, all the other people that have been called out and stuff have, like, people have screenshots of things they've said to them, and, like, people go on public rants and Twitter.
I guess that's another thing in this day and age that people do have a lot of, like, text messages and things
receipts.
like that. Yeah, receipts.
Why?
No, that's totally fine.
That's what it is. That's
No, that's a really good point. Okay, so go Tobuscus.
Yes, Tobuscus.
So he was accused of doing something, and he denied it?
He did. I think he did deny it originally.
Okay.
So, I just dropped him as soon as that came out, by the way.
So why? What was your determining factor? Did you believe that he did it, or did you say, just in case he did this, I should step away?
Yeah, that one.
Like, even if it's not true, like, what was your thought process?
I was thinking, like, just in case, like, he did something like this, I just don't want to be associated with him until there's definitive proof that he did or did not. And then if he didn't do it and there's definitive proof that, like, screenshots were doctored or something like that, then, okay, maybe I can come back. But, like, I don't, and I do that a lot, actually. Like, I'm going to step away from this until this blows over, and if something bad did happen, then I'm staying really far away. But if it's still chill and good, and someone was just trying to attack him because they didn't like him, then it would be fine, and I would go back.
Right. So, but I mean, you see the danger of that, right? So, in that a false accusation has a lot of power in that case.
Right.
Like, if someone comes out and just flat out falsely accuses somebody of something, then if the followers back away until the issue is resolved, that gives a lot of power to the accuser.
Right.
I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that that's a thing you have to think about a little bit, is what the consequences are.
Right.
And what power you're giving to a false narrative. I think you jumped on at the very beginning, hey, it gives someone who doesn't like somebody the ability to come forward and make an accusation like this.
Because if they just, like, I think that doesn't work as well if it's the first time someone's accused them, but if there's already
that's true. And it's, I don't know, like, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here, right? I think we have to err on the side of believing the accusers personally. So my personal preference is to err on believing the accusations unless something comes out that kind of shows. And there have been very public cases of false accusations where people were punished, like, certainly in society, in the media and things like that, and treated as guilty, and then suddenly we find out that it's a false accusation. That has happened, but it's pretty rare, number one. And like, I think that you can't go around dismissing people's claims just because there's no concrete evidence, because oftentimes there's not going to be concrete evidence.
You know what I think? I think people should be hooked up to polygraphs way more often.
Well,
I think that's what should be happening.
That's a whole different conversation. Okay, so you and I were going to do, like, a study on polygraphs and the accuracy of polygraphs.
Right.
To test that
theory.
assertion of yours.
I feel like you should get a better polygraph
Right. Well,
and then
yeah,
hook people
yeah,
up.
you're right.
for
If there was a thing that worked that detected whether people were lying or not, then sure, that would be a good thing. But
I mean,
polygraphs are not really it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. You should give people the potion from Harry Potter.
You're right. Okay, if we had such a thing. So I think that it's just an interesting question that I wanted you to think about a little bit more, right? And I would love to hear what you guys think a little bit about, maybe about the specific allegations of sexual harassment that are happening right now, but more in general when there's a he said, she said, or he said, or she said, she said, or
They said,
yeah,
they said.
they said, they said.
Who knows?
She said, she said.
All the pronouns.
If there's a
Just say they. That's much easier.
What is what are the things that you use? I mean, you're putting it on the scale, right?
Yeah.
Okay, here's this person's denial, here's this person's accusation. What are the things you put on each side to weigh against each other?
Yeah.
And some of it, unfortunately, is just going to be credibility, right? So if somebody really likable denies an accusation from somebody who's really not likable, a lot of times that likable person gets away with doing stuff just because you believe them more. Mm-hmm. And a lot of, this happens a lot in, these kinds of crimes and other kinds of crimes, like people who are sort of upstanding citizens will prey on someone who's not an upstanding citizen, so that if anything ever comes out, it will be this upstanding citizen's word versus this person who's a drug addict or a criminal or something like that. Yeah. And so if you prey on somebody who automatically has less credibility, then if it ever comes out that you have to do this kind of battle, you got an advantage. I know, it's all built in.
Moral of the story: trust nobody, not even yourself.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good way to go. Yeah, cool. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit, and we'll continue to talk a little bit. But yeah, you guys let us know what you think about it, and we'll keep developing our thoughts a little bit more. But this is the world that we live in, and you need to get good at this stuff, and you need to at least make a conscious understanding of why you believe one person, you don't believe another person. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. All right, get us out of here.
So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to let us know in the comments below what you thought about this conversation, any other things you want to add, and possibly ideas for more room vlogs, because we are very quickly running out of those. Thank you so much for watching.
A lot to talk about.
Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye, guys.